everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and I just wanted to talk to you and let you know that Brattleboro Community TV is really doing so much for the community right now. We've got a lot of new shows on that are addressing the coronavirus. We've got various updates from different people. One is Tim Ash from the Vermont Senate. We also have Peter Fish Case's great show, which is almost a daily show of updates from people in the community who are on the front lines and have all kinds of information that's so pertinent and timely right now. We also, of course, are covering select board meetings, church services, the usual things like that, and also shows like Next Stage is doing some great shows that are online, some for kids as well, which is really pretty great that you can tune into. And also, of course, Derek Jordan is doing his World Fusion show as usual. And Here We Are, which is a weekly show. So we're very happy today to have Jon Potter on the show. Jon is has been around town, and so many people know him from his days at the Reformer. And he is now the executive director of the Latchis Corporation and Latchis Arts down here on Main Street, the corner of Main and Flat. For many years, he was at the Brattleboro Reformer, and he created the award-winning and popular Ovation Arts and Entertainment section of that paper, which is still going really strong and very popular. And music has always been a big part of Jon's life, music and a little bit of theater as well. And Brattleboro, he's sung with the Brattleboro Concert Choir, as well as Blanche Moyse Chorale. So here we have on the show today, Jon Potter. Welcome, Jon.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on.
Yeah.
You know, very often I'll start the show asking people how they got to Brattleboro. But I think one thing that's very interesting is that you grew up in New York City. You're an urban guy.
Yep. I had a great childhood in New York. Didn't know anything else other than being a New York City kid and playing ball on the streets. And Central Park was my backyard. And yeah, that was didn't have any conception of rural life. You know, when you're a child, you just know what your childhood is, and it was a great childhood.
Yeah, and your parents were a little bit involved in theater as well, is that right?
Yeah, strictly as amateurs, but they met doing Gilbert and Sullivan in New York City, and a set of my grandparents met the same way, and so there is a deep and very strong vein of ham that runs through our family for sure, and but all in an amateur way, just in as a thing you do to fulfill yourselves and to express yourselves and enjoy yourself in life, and it was on that level. But I come by it genetically and you know, very much steeped in it. Yeah,
that's so great. And you know, it's so great looking now, seeing you come on stage at the Latchis and do introductions and all that kind of thing, and realize, oh, you're very at home there.
Yeah, I guess we've never really met a microphone we didn't like. Most of the people in my family, I'm probably one of the quieter ones. So that'll tell you something about what family gatherings are like. There's a story of my grandmother at one point sort of pounding a table full of family with 15 people and saying to someone, "Don't talk while I'm interrupting," to this great volume of sound. So yeah, we're lively, dramatic, musical folks for sure.
That's a really good quote too to remember, and I think
that's a good one.
Yeah. I think I've heard it before from other families, but it can be legion depending on the person.
Yeah.
And so you spent your childhood and teenagehood pretty much in New York City. Is that right?
Yep, that's
yeah.
Right. Yep.
And did you do theater then?
Yeah, through school. It was always part of my life. I think my parents chose a school that was strong in music and theater for me to attend, and then I just stayed interested in it in high school and on through college. Again, without much of a thought of a career, but it was certainly the thing I did for fun and for friendship and for fulfillment and expression. It kept me out of trouble mostly.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's always good to have something when you're a teenager that keeps you out of trouble, or at least interests you as much as trouble could, right?
Yes, I think that's a better way to put it. Yeah.
And also, I think one thing that you mentioned that was very interesting was, I can't remember if it was high school or college, that you did a lot of work with developmentally disabled kids.
Oh yeah, yeah. This was I started in college and continued for a year after college, and they were kids and adults with developmental disabilities, and I
Mm-hmm.
just stumbled into it. Although I found out later that a great aunt of mine was a sort of pioneer in the field of special education back a couple of generations before it was had much validity, much appreciation. So maybe there was a hint of destiny there, but it was an incredible experience. I worked at a summer camp for
Mm.
folks with developmental disabilities, and it really taught me a lot about people that I hope things that I still appreciate and use and value today. Chief among them is just the human need for dignity and to be
Yeah.
treated with respect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a population among many, but that's a population that I think suffers from a lack of dignified treatment and particularly historically has.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you treat people with dignity and respect, it's amazing the things that can happen, and it's amazing that people come to life, they flourish with that platform of dignity, and I certainly hope that that's something that I continue to carry forward today. But it taught me life lessons without question.
Yeah, right, right. And I would think also at that age, when we're so self-centered, for the main part, in your 20s, to be able to open your heart that way, I
Mm.
would think would make a really big difference and have an impact, as you say.
Yeah, I think it grounded me, and it's very humbling.
Yeah.
The things that you can and can't control, the things that and yeah, meeting people where they are is an incredibly powerful and humbling act, but I think ultimately the most important thing.
Yeah, and did that open you up in relation to your relationships with people? I know that you went on to journalism, which we'll talk about. But I think a lot of times when you're face to face with someone and talking, you're looking for the story if it's journalism, or you're looking for this, or you're there for a reason. Did that affect you in a way?
I think treating people empathetically
Mm.
and conveying that you're tuned in and very empathetic to them is something that certainly translated directly to journalism. You don't have to be a person's friend in journalism, but the person should know that you're listening, that you're caring, that you're taking in their story,
Yeah.
and perhaps my antenna got a little bit refined
Mm.
from that experience, and then beyond that.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. I believe it. Yeah, yeah. And so your route to Brattleboro, from New York City to Brattleboro, can you describe that a little bit?
Indirect, but like so many people, I landed in Brattleboro as an experiment, as a reboot
Yeah.
of life. My parents had moved out of the city when I was in high school to an old farm that they had bought in Cambridge, New York, which is right over the border from Bennington, Grandma
Mm.
Moses country.
Yep.
And something about that put put an appreciation of rural living in me. The country got its hooks in me. I still value walking in the woods and being connected to seasons, being connected to where your food comes from, being able to walk out of your house or apartment and see something really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And all those things I think were really reinforced at that time. Nonetheless, I was a young man practicing journalism, mostly in rural settings, but hadn't really landed anywhere. And I got to Brattleboro. I had sort of run out of gas where I was, and a
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine who we had worked together at another newspaper, he had run out of gas. He was at the Reformer at the time, and he was looking for a change. And he said, "Well, why don't you come and take my job at the Reformer, and you can see if this helps. You can figure it out." He said, "I think you'll like Brattleboro," which I didn't believe at the time, but we made that. I came up and took his job, and
Huh.
intending to stay a year.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's a pretty typical story.
Yeah.
Brattleboro gets its hooks into people, and
Yeah.
I knew pretty early on that this was a place that could be a place where I would put down roots.
Mm-hmm.
And then life sort of built in around it.
Right.
Now I've been here over 20 years on a
Right.
kind of on an intention to originally stay 1 year.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
here we are.
Yes, that's
For
right.
sure.
And
Yeah.
I think so many people that come on the show talk about that. You know, very often a Volkswagen van has something to do with the story, depending on one's age. But there's many people just talk about, you know, the first time I drove through Brattleboro, I really felt like I wanted to be here. That kind of story.
Yeah.
So you started the Reformer.
Yep.
And you're writing for the Reformer for a while. And when did you start focusing on the arts and entertainment piece of it?
I spent 4 years. The first 4 years I was in Brattleboro with the sports department, and loved it. And yeah, really, it's a very creative thing to write sports. You watch a game, and it's up to you to figure out what the story of that game was. It was actually a great exercise in sort of creative writing all the time. But the hours of the sports department were a little difficult. They were all nighttime hours and weekend tournaments. It was great when I first got here, but by that time I had fallen in love and was ready to change and, you know, add family balance to my life, and so was looking about for another opportunity at the paper, and the arts and entertainment job opened up, and it was certainly a good fit, you know, and it had always been an interest. So it was a very natural slide, but it grew out of life experience and where I was at in life, and the fact that I had committed to really being in Brattleboro, and how was I going to make it work.
I love your description of sports writing as being a real exercise in creative writing. That's really interesting.
It was probably the most creative, and the other thing that went with it is, you know, I was often on the sidelines of games, also taking the photographs that would go with the story. So, you know, you're trying to find an image that tells the story. You're trying to find the story of the game. Something happened on the field, but what was that? And it's not always related to the score. The score and the facts don't tell you anything. What is the story? And you have an awful lot of leeway in coming up. And the stories fit into archetypes. You know, is it a David and Goliath moment, or is it you know, is it the mighty juggernaut, you know, dispatching another hapless foe, or is it the, you know, one person's coming, you know, stepping into the spotlight and you know, having a moment of glory. And, you know, there are all kinds of things that can happen, but it's really up to you to decide what it is that you just saw, and to perceive that while it's happening, and then try to capture an image that goes with it. And then at the end, to put it on the page of a paper in a way that tells the story as well. So it was kind of a multi-layered, creative act that I really enjoyed.
I love that. I love it. You just did a little master class in sports writing. It's really interesting. And so you got Ovation happening, and it turned out to be such a popular thing in Thursday paper. You know, everybody, it had its own little place in the paper, and that's what we've used for years, is what's happening in town.
Yeah, thanks. So that was another great aspect of
yes. And at some point, after you'd been there for 14, 15 years, you made a transition out of journalism.
I had come to realize that there were things about journalism that weren't working for me, chiefly around the professional distance that you need to keep to be a good journalist. And I was finding that wasn't working for me. When you're a journalist, you're not really on anybody's team. You're in the room and you know, collegial with a great many people and organizations. I certainly was. I loved all the people I dealt with and got to interview and to get to know over the years. But in the end, you're not really deeply committed to anything that anybody is doing. And I really felt that I really wanted to be on someone's team, and to really dig deep and dig in and bring what I thought I could bring, you know, specifically to an organization with passion. And you have to be very dispassionate as much as you can be. that was really driven home to me when I looked around and realized that the people that I was covering in the arts community, I really was viewing them as my colleagues, and as opposed to the folks I worked with. Not that there was anything wrong with them. I loved being in newsrooms. And once I realized that those were my peers and my colleagues, and I wanted to be on a team with them, and the ability to work with them and make things happen with them, I knew it was time to move up and out of journalism.
Yeah.
And it took about 4 years from that moment of sort of recognition to putting the pieces in place to make the move.
And then the Latchis opened up for you. That job opened up.
Yeah, which is staggering. I had no conception that I would be able to move to something like that in that role. It was my first foray into the nonprofit or the mission-driven work, and to be able to land there and to be able to land as executive director was really not something that I ever thought would be possible, but it happened.
Yeah.
And I always envisioned the interview room of wherever I was applying and trying to convince them that I was worth the risk without much experience. And then that moment happened at several interviews at the Latchis, and I guess we took the risk together. Agreed to take the risk together. So.
Yeah, it was a big leap. Well, the other thing too, and I'd love you to give us a snapshot of your job, because you're dealing with Latchis Arts, which is nonprofit. You're dealing with the Latchis Corporation, which is a business unto itself. So that you've basically got two jobs going on.
Yeah, it's an interesting hybrid and an interesting model. For most of the time, what happens is there's a tremendous balance between the kind of two aspects of the job. So, running a business, a for-profit business, and running the business side of a nonprofit is very detail-oriented, lots of spreadsheets, lots of tracking money in, money out, very right-brained and businessy. Managing all the people at the Latchis is a business skill, and it occupies a lot of time. And then simultaneously, that's sort of counterweighed by these tremendously exciting events that we're always doing, and planning programs, and very aspirational, very big picture things. So it's such a mix of right brain and left brain, of big picture and small picture, of work and play all together. Yeah. And the balance when it's in balance, which is most of the time, is really what keeps what sustains me and keeps the engine going. So.
Wow. Yeah. But it is a lot to juggle. And how many employees are you dealing with?
Altogether, there are just over a couple of dozen.
Wow.
Working all aspects, and that's everything from scooping popcorn, to polishing our terrazzo floors, to managing a movie theater, to running a capital campaign, and manning the hotel front desk, and taking care of that wonderful old building, which is a project all in itself. Oh yes, and it's a community cornerstone since 1938. Is that right? Yeah, 1938. Yeah, you got a lot of irons in that fire going on. And speaking of juggling, I love every minute of it.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's a wonderful thing for people to hear. That's great. So in the midst of this, right now, well, actually, one thing I'd like to ask you before that is, you did mention that you have a very strong or very defined work-home ethic, or differentiation between work and home. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because you have some mentors in that.
I did. I had two of the best mentors you could possibly have, and they both came to me when I was a child. The first is my father, who was my dad, who's just a great, I loved him absolutely to pieces. And he always would come home from work and step in the door and immediately go into his room and change into what he called his fighting clothes. And then he would come out and play with me and my brother. So there was a very clear line. There was very clear crossing of the threshold of home and coming in from the outside world. and you change your uniform, and then you can go do your home things. And of course, being my dad, I absolutely worship that and aspire to that. That was reinforced for me by childhood days spent watching Mr. Rogers. And he did the same thing. He would come in, start the show, come in, change his uniform.
Right.
So he'd cross into the threshold and change his uniform, and then he could get on with his play and his wise
That's
mentoring.
great.
So I think the two of them together, reinforcing each other, very similar, and they even look a little bit alike. I just really embedded in me the separation of work and home as much as you possibly can.
Right.
And so for me, it's just how I've chosen to work my adult life and the work-life balance. Keep those boundaries clear.
And it's a great visual image, Another thing, you've talked a lot about finding home and finding it in Brattleboro, and having a family and a job that you love and all of that. And I know that you like to walk the streets of Brattleboro. All right. Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it pushes the same buttons in me that growing up in New York City did. There's a vitality and an energy to the streets of Brattleboro. And for me, it seems the analogy I use is it's a Richard Scarry book. For those of you who don't know the book, or for those of you who do, these are children's books. They're usually kind of on a big scale. And you open up the book and it has a depiction of a busy town, all in action, and everybody's doing their thing. But it's also a very friendly and familiar town, and everybody's sort of known to you as the reader. Oh, there's Roger the plumber. Oh, there's Lowly Worm. Oh, there's John the latches guy. Oh, there, and so Brattleboro feels very much like that. It has the vitality and energy that I can pick up on that vibe, but it's all on a scale and a friendliness that feels very good to me. So
I remember those books. What do people do all day? That was one of them, and then you had all the people in the various places doing things. And you also talked about having a bit of a gritty urban feel to Brattleboro.
Yeah, it's not it's not a picture postcard. Idyllic, absolutely perfect looking place. It's a real working place, and it always has been. And I think the city kid in me, thrives off of a little bit of asphalt and a little bit of grit. And I also think we grow by dealing with real problems and not living in a bubble. And Brattleboro certainly has its challenges, and those are only being drawn out and exacerbated, and new ones created in this current situation. But that's how you grow as a person and as a community, is through tests. And how do you handle the adversity? Everybody can handle the good times. And so I sort of thrive on the chafe and the rub and the things that live uncomfortably. And accept those as opportunities to bring out the best in each other and yourself.
And I think we've really seen that in the last few weeks in Brattleboro. How many people have come together in so many diverse places and creating new resources for the community. And it happens so fast. It happens so quickly.
And we're having to come together without being able to come together. Which is really a new set of muscles, and how to hang out with your friends while you're on Zoom, and how to really tune in and be in solidarity with people that you don't run into on Main Street anymore, and hence stay connected with them. And how to rally to a downtown that right now is dormant. And there are many demonstrations of that, true to Brattleboro's community spirit. This is antithetical to basic humanity, and to stay apart from one another, and to not do and not be in community, and to find our usual creative outlets taken away. I can't sing right now with the chorale because the chorale is not meeting, and so that's an experience everyone's
Oh,
My
yes.
daughter is a New
Yeah.
England Youth Theater kid, and she can't
Yeah.
be with her pals, and we're all feeling that. So it's very much antithetical to our core humanity, and we have to figure that out. The hunger for connection is very real, and us talking by Zoom would have been absurd to us a few weeks ago. It's like, what?
I
I'll just pop
know.
into the studio, and I'm having Zoom calls with high school friends and college friends, and even friends
Yes.
who live half a mile away from me in Brattleboro, and we're drinking a beer each on Zoom together, and talking the way we would in person. It speaks to our elemental humanity, how much of it's been taken away from us, and how much we're eager to rebuild that, and the ways that we find to do that.
Yeah, and value it.
And value it.
Yeah. And value each other. So, Jon, coming through this fire, going through this fire, the Latchis has been an incredibly relevant part of the community, a vibrant part. Coming together as audiences, is such a huge part of it. Going forward, even who knows, in a week or two, things are going to be different. In a month, things are going to be different. We have no idea. Do you have a vision or a feel for what it might be like post-corona?
I think that's the hardest thing is I really don't.
Yeah.
I think that, the Latchis has always played a role in it's one of the many ways we as a community gather as a community,
Right.
and reinforce our community love for one another, our values, often in the context of being either at a really great entertaining event, and it may also be a fundraiser, doing good while having a good time all together. I hope that we get as a community comfortable with being together in large spaces again fairly soon, but time will tell, and we'll respect everyone's feelings around that. It's funny, you watch a movie and people hug on the movie, and there's something jarring about that now, right. Or strangers shaking hands, and we're going to have to appreciate what we've been through and live with that, and see what comes of our desire to be together. But we will have a role in the community coming back to life.
Yes, right.
And the community rallying to the support of itself and to other entities within the community. And it may change a little bit,
right.
But that is a key role that we play. One
of the things I think that that got a lot of us walking downtown, and in the course of these last few weeks, at some point your marquee changed, and you changed the marquee to "No Place Like Home."
Yeah, that was a suggestion of some of our board members. What do we do with this marquee? Home is maybe the most important word in the English language for me, and probably for a lot of other people. And it's worth, in that regard, thinking of the people who don't have a home, and appreciating and empathizing with what they don't have, because of how important it is to us.
Right.
And home means many things to many people. For me, it's certainly my own home place, but it pulls very quickly and immediately to my community, this whole community. And that's really, when I look at that marquee, that's what I think of. I think of our whole town. And there is no place like this home. And, that is going to be something that we'll harness. That's going to be an asset that we'll need to harness, that feeling and that spirit. And so, when I see that, that's what I think of. Not just a line from a movie, and not just the place where your coat rack is, but this whole community.
That's right. The larger picture as well.
Yeah.
Jon, thank you so much.
Wendy, thank you.
Yeah, it was great to have you on the show, and I really appreciate all that you're doing. And
thank you.
I think we all do, and I know that you've had a real heartbreak with a lot of the things that have come up for you with the Latchis in the last couple of weeks. So I appreciate that as well.
Thanks, and congratulations to you on your 10,000th show. Or whatever.
That's right, 10,000. You're right, you're 10,002.
Okay, great. Well,
Thanks, John. We'll see you again.
Yep, take care, Wendy. Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks to all of you for tuning in today. Great to have Jon Potter on with us. And again, another word for BCTV, and hope that you stay tuned to all of the programs that are on, and the staff at BCTV keeps coming up with new ideas and new people who are coming in wanting to do different kinds of programs. So it's really worth to stay tuned and stay connected. It's very easy to get to, and you can see lineups of, in the calendar of both papers, the schedules of the programs that are up, but you can also stream anything at home and online. So thanks for being with us, and remember to stay with us and to carry on and keep talking. And we'll see you next week.